Hello, squad. What's up? It's the HR Nightmares ladies. And big news today. Amy's sitting on the other side of the table. Hey, if you if you like this podcast, even with Amy on the wrong side of the table, make sure you hit like, subscribe, tell all your friends. We're trying to tell some fun stories today. So today is all about the next 30 minutes you're going to spend with us. And if you have it on 1.5 times, you only have to spend 23 minutes with us. We're going to talk about the inmates running the asylum. This is Amy's quote. It's all about culture that has gone completely off the rails. One way or the other. The culture is like, okay, there's a pendulum, right? You can have like a dictatorship, a tyranny, right? A culture of fear. And then you can have the inmates running the asylum, which is the other end, which is just like everybody
there's
thinks
no
it's
authority.
a social experiment.
Right.
All right.
Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the
We'd
Flies.
like to be a balance somewhere in the middle. That's ideal state.
Yeah, ideal state, or like have some statistical deviation from median.
Yeah, right. Get back on track.
Math and HR. What? No.
HR math. Yeah. Oh, that brings back bad memories. PTSD. I had a plant manager once that was like, this better not be HR math. And I was like, I can't guarantee you anything. I'm a liberal arts girl. So where do you want to start? What's happening?
Well, I think it's just been coming up more and more. And like, I'm hearing it in a couple of situations from example of just like, the culture has somehow gotten away from us, or it's changed over time, right? And somewhere we haven't been tracking along enough, and it's gotten to a point where like it's so wildly different than that people who've been somewhere for 5 years are just feeling such a drastic shift. Whereas, you know, maybe I've been there or supported a certain group for a year or something. I'm like, I don't see how drastic it's been, but to that other individual, it's like night and day. Or it used to be this thing and now it's this thing. And it's just been coming up more and more. And so I've been thinking about it, you know, especially in our roles as HR in what I do now. And I think back to some of my old career where I was responsible for the culture, right? Like I was the decision maker. When it got off the rails, I knew how to get it back on because I was responsible for going off the rails. But now I'm like, how do I show up as a great HR consultant and business partner when I'm only there such a fraction of time, but I see all these things happening, but I'm not in control of it either. So I think that's where it all kind of came from. And I really wanted to talk to you guys on like advice and what you've seen and what you've experienced over the years, because I think we know it. And when we're not intentional every day about the culture, we can unintentionally get to a really different place.
I agree. I think that sometimes, especially with groups, when they've had the stalwarts who have been there for years and years, and then they have a new influx of new hires that might not understand or might come in to an organization. Especially, I'm working with a lot of nonprofits right now. And so they've gone through their struggle years and now they've reached a point, an apex of where they are. And then the new people are like, oh, this is a mess. And the people that have been there forever are like, this is great. We're at such an amazing point and we've grown so much. And then there's this internal kind of clash. So I wonder sometimes if it's not a recruiting piece, that we're recruiting people and not maybe overselling what the job will be. Do you ever feel like that happens?
I always feel like recruiting is the opportunity to level up what maybe has been missing. I don't know. Like, even if you have a great culture, it's like the time that you can be a culture ad. I know it sounds like a cop-out. Culture is what's happening on the front lines, right? It's how people show up. It's how they talk to each other. It's how they work together as a team or don't. It's like shared passions. It's
also kind of behaviors. Like I've got one group
behaviors
that
definitely
loves to kind of have little posses, right? And so some people, they're whispery kind of posses. And I think that's terrible. That is terrible.
Yeah, it's bad.
And it hasn't always been that way. And it's just recently started to be that way. And I don't know what it is. I wonder sometimes if it's not the new hires. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, so, I always wonder when there's those little groups, and I've got it at one too, where it's like I think back, all the like meetings after the meetings and like the cooler talk
whispery
over here once we leave a room. And I'm like, why is that happening? So there's something that's happening when we're in the meeting where people feel like they're not being heard or they don't feel comfortable saying what they actually think. And then they're feeling like the only place they can say it is the meeting after the meeting or in that little tiny group, because in the greater group, their feedback, either they've tried to give it before, it's been shut down, they feel like we're not listening or we don't agree, or they're so disgruntled at that point, they're just going to tell anyone.
And they
who will
just
hear
want maybe
it.
their posse friends to agree with them.
Right. They're riling other people up to kind of commiserate with them.
Me in my misery. Right.
So I always go back to like the root versus the I don't really care that much about meetings after me. I'm like, if they're having them, okay, well, we've got to then ask ourselves, like, why are they doing that?
Yeah.
And so I think what I see is I strongly believe that everybody holds the culture. Everyone's a culture keeper. And every person on the team is responsible for leading, even though they're not in charge. And so often what I'm seeing now is the employees are really putting all the culture and all the bad things that are happening 100% on like the 4 or 5 leaders in the organization and holding them accountable for everything.
Right.
And then you have change of leadership or you have reorganizations happening and you're not giving those leaders the opportunity to really like get good at their job when it's only been 3 months. And they're just putting a little too much emphasis on the leader. I'm like, well, what about you? What are you doing every day? Right? Because you just talking smack about the leader every time you leave the room, that's not being a culture ad. That's not going to help get back on track. But that's what I'm facing right now. And I just want to be a good HR business partner to everyone, the people and the leaders.
The first thing that comes to mind is like, one thing that the 3 of us have in common is I think we're good at, you mentioned the root, but like that's just total dysfunction, right? And I think we're good at eliminating dysfunction. So how do you eliminate dysfunction? Well, first thing that you do is call out the BS for what it is, like right then and there, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes, I mean, I'm not a big like public feedback person, but sometimes if everyone is witnessing it and it's like you can kind of ha-ha about it, but it's not really a joke. And it's like, hey, look, I see, time out, one conversation at a time in this meeting. If people are kind of whispering or snickering about something in the meeting, and it's like just calling people out, but doing it to everyone and not like obviously like singling somebody out who probably always does it. But I like calling something like that out publicly. But then I think from the top down, obviously there's some level of distrust where they're having meetings after the meeting, right? And so this concept of radical candor, I hope you listen to Masterclass. I'm the Masterclass pusher. Kim Scott, radical candor. It's like caring deeply about somebody, but also like, and being extremely transparent with that person. And it's something like every time the leadership team at Vanica gets together, we actually go through and we might zip through it in like 3 seconds, but we talk about radical candor at the beginning of every meeting. And it's like, here's what it means. Like on the other side, it's like ruinous empathy and like being too nice or trying to talk and have a meeting after the meeting. But it actually is like passive aggressive when you're doing that, even though you're trying to be nice in the meeting and avoid direct conflict or whatever. But, or like obnoxious aggression, which is just like, whatever, wanting to fight for the sake of fighting and like hearing your own voice. And right. So, I mean, this concept of radical candor is really something that maybe would be helpful on like talking about or discussing or, passing the book out or sharing the one, masterclass that's 25 minutes long and having people listen to it or just explore, go out to YouTube and watch some free videos on radical candor. But I think a lot of times like the dysfunction comes from either ruinous empathy or obnoxious aggression. And then it just spirals out of control because nobody's calling out the bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just me calling out the bullshit. And then I'm like,
that's what they pay you for.
I know.
Leave it alone. And then you can stick around longer.
They'll fire me for it too, eventually.
Yeah. They're like,
they'll be like, all right, we've had enough of this honest and direct feedback.
It's definitely, it's funny how the HR person always is like the culture holder. One thing that I did, and I'll probably do it every other place that I ever work or consult to, we turn the culture surveys. So do you do culture surveys in almost every organization,
Yes.
right? We turned them over to an employee-led culture committee. So we took a bunch of volunteers and we said, you can't be a manager, you have to be a frontline employee. And every time we get a culture survey with open comments, which we shortened it down to, would you recommend it a good place to work, 1 through 10, and you get the employee net promoter score. And then the other 3 questions are, what do you want the company to start doing, stop doing, continue doing? We get open comments out the wazoo. We turn it over to the employee culture committee. We don't scrub it, nothing like that. And then these folks read through it very seriously and like come to the leadership team with like action items. And of course we might say, no, that's crazy. No, we're not going to do that. But we respond to all their suggestions. And then the company now sees we've done that now like 3 years in a row, twice a year. And so like other team members like understand that it's not, the anonymous survey is not just sort of being scrubbed by the CEO or the HR consultant.
They get to actually see the comments.
They get to see it. And if you want to be part of the solution, like volunteer for this committee, you can read, it's a friggin' novel. Are you kidding me? Go read the culture survey. It's very interesting. You always get good feedback.
But then
right?
they're invested, right?
Then they're invested.
Yeah.
And I think like that may be a good thing to do, is say, hey, we're going to do a culture survey. We're going to turn it over to, frontline team members and let you guys
good idea.
digest it. And
Yeah, I
then
like
you
that.
decide what's the best path forward. Because we can't own that. Like, you can be the steward and the champion and the flag holder, but like at the end of the day, I mean, the culture is what's happening in every meeting
Right.
you're not in every transaction, in every conversation that employees are having with one another. And you just can't be everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I think the hard thing is too, is like, I can't always say everything that I see, right? That wouldn't be being a great HR partner to the leaders of the business either. There are moments where I get the feedback and I'm like, yeah, I think we're a little weak at this area. And trust me, I'm the first one that says it to the leaders when I see it. But at the same time, I'm like, guys, like I can't share with you that I just talked about that in a leadership meeting this morning. So that's where it gets hard. So I'm like, trust you. Sometimes you guys have got to trust that like we are actively trying to work on that. And my big thing is, with leaders always, if you have an area that is an area of opportunity, and say there's a breakdown of communication, and that's a big part of culture, is the way in which we effectively communicate. It's probably number one. And that's usually the area that all the employees want us to be better at, because you can't
doesn't
meet
matter.
everyone's expectation.
Yeah.
Everyone has a different expectation
Every
of communication.
company,
That's
any
what I talk
size,
about.
Communication across departments.
Yeah,
is like the number one
communication
thing
is
employees
different,
want.
and it's number one. And I tell people in every training I ever do, because they think it's only in their company. I'm like, trust me, I've worked for
It's in
now 40
every
businesses
single
here. I
company.
worked for a great company for a long time. It's number one always. But I just always kind of say, okay, say it's communication. I'm like, listen, I'm the first one that's telling them, like, you have to effectively communicate that. You have to do that better. You didn't do that well. But I'm not going to turn around in a room of employees and be like, yeah, I told them that.
Yeah.
No,
They are
you
bad at
can't.
that.
Yeah,
That's not how I'm going to say it. So sometimes I'm like, you guys have to trust that we are actively working on those things, but it takes time. I remember being a leader and being given a job, and, I was taking over a role that the previous manager, while great and had great strengths and got promoted to a different role, like she was a little bit more of a micromanager. She kind of led a little more with an iron fist. I was not that way. I was probably the exact opposite. If you couldn't figure out how to do your job without me managing you, you couldn't work for me, because I was never going to do that. And it took me 1.5 years to change the culture of that location. The culture was a culture of no, when the organization was a culture of yes. I'm like, what is happening here? Why are employees saying no to customers? This is ridiculous. Took me 1.5 years. Took a lot of terminations, took a lot of hiring new people, took a lot of training, a lot of breaking bad patterns. And 1.5 years later, that was a great location. And after 3 years, we had the top engagement scores in the company for employees. And I'm like, but it took time.
That's
and
the
I think
other
our
thing, it
employees
takes
don't
time.
always allow for the time when there's changes in leadership.
One thing I think is interesting about what we do and having clients and going to different offices every single week is that you see such a variety of things. Like there's some groups I work with, not anymore because I've changed their habits, but it would be like they would shut their doors every day.
Yeah.
Everyone's working in kind of silence or with their headphones on and not communicating or sending emails. Like I would send you an email sitting right there. Can you please help me with this? Or a Slack. And it's like, what are you doing? Get up and just talk to the people.
Yeah.
So I think it's nice for us, consultants, is that we have seen what's really working, like that example for what you just said, and things that aren't working. And so we really can advise well. At least that's what I think we do well at.
Who's the best, and you don't have to say names, but like think of like the best leader that communicated cascading messages. Like that's what it's all about, right? At the end of the day, like the CEO or the owner, the head leader, whether it's a department or of the whole company, like they're really good at getting the buy-in and motivating employees to do the best for the company to the best of their ability and have the owner mentality, right? But like, who's the best leader you can think of that did a really great job cascading messages and communicating throughout the org? Can you think of somebody?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, good. Tell us about it.
Well, we just had a really interesting thing. The staff was having a revolt. This is an owner of a company. They were having a revolt, right? They thought that this person was really harsh and really nasty and mean, and their feelings were really hurt. And so they came to me as HR person. We want to, have a big meeting, but we're scared to ask. And I'm like, well, you shouldn't be scared to ask because you can certainly talk to this person. There's not like a glass castle around him. So him or her. And so we had a meeting, and I kind of prepped them to say, you have to listen to this, and you have to listen to every single word. And so it was like they wanted to jump in and refute what they were saying, but I kept looking at them, and so they stopped and they really listened. And it took a little bit of time, but then it was probably honestly an hour, 60 minutes of just hearing all of the stuff. And I really respected the fact that when it was the leader's turn to talk, they didn't just say, okay, I see your point, I'll make a change. It was like, okay, you're honest with me, I'm going to be honest with you. And here's why I acted in that way, because I didn't have confidence anymore because you did this, this, and this. And we were on a tight deadline, and I ended up having to do the work. So it was one of the greatest conflict resolution meetings I've ever had.
That's great.
Yeah, and he did a great job. So, but it was a little bit of prep for him because I think he wanted to just say, this is bullshit. I didn't do these things, and it's my company. I can do what I want to do. And I was like, you'll get a little bit better if you can actually sit and really hear and absorb what they're trying to say. Mm-hmm. So it was
good on you that you help that person prep, because if you were like, hey, I think we all just need to get in a room, and then like 10 minutes later y'all are in the room and he hasn't had a chance to sort of like be conscientious about his emotions, his body language, the way he speaks back to that team member that was willing to give feedback. And like obviously he was already frustrated because this person he thinks is not good at their job, so he's got no confidence in their ability. He doesn't think they're responsible, like reliable. And so for me, I know personally, like I would be easily like on the defensive and attack in his seat. So like good on you to prep that person, and good on them to listen.
And it was
hard.
It was hard. I mean, it was an unvarnished conversation. I mean, it was really real, and it had been things that had been boiling up. And I wish in retrospect that we had done that sooner. I didn't realize how kind of bad it had become from the staff's perspective. And so, but that was great. And I loved it, getting all in the room together.
Sometimes, I mean, it's not good to let things boil up, but sometimes you have to get to a point where everyone's just so pissed off, they're ready to be brutally honest.
And that's
right?
what this was. Yeah.
Otherwise you end up in a little bit of ruinous empathy, because it's like, well, I don't totally want to make this person angry or upset with me. But like when you finally have had you're like, I'm ready to quit, or I'm going to tell this person something I'm going to regret. Like sometimes you got to get to that break point.
Yeah. I see that ruinous empathy more here.
I am seeing that so much.
I think it's just a little bit cultural on where we live, just people who are a little more passive, but that passive turns into passive aggressiveness. Yeah. And that, right? Like I'm not willing to say it to your face, but then I'll go home and write a 4-page email about it. And you're like, no, we just sat here. That was your time to tell me what is
your
this,
time to
right?
say, that's your time to say you push that back. And you're like, no, we had that meeting. So we'll meet again, but I'm not going to accept this post-meeting, manifesto.
I had that a couple of weeks ago where we said, we're like, that's fine. If this is your feedback based on the decision that was made, we'll take it. We'll put it in the documentation along with the documentation we presented you, but it doesn't change anything and we're not responding to anything in here.
Yeah.
Like there's no response needed. This is all things that we said to you. It's written, it's documented. We've had conversation after conversation. We're done saying the same thing over and over and over again. You have to comprehend it at some point. So like we've already answered this stuff. We're not doing it, but I appreciate your 4-page manifesto. And that's just the way it goes. I'm like, I'm not going to continue to go back and forth and back and forth, you know, and that was something that happened a lot in my old business, right? And we would say, we're like, we're not going to continue. You either take some action on what you feel like you need to do best for yourself.
Right.
As far as we're concerned, we're done with this, you know, until we have to get sued or something. But that was a big part. But going back to where you think cascading messages, we worked with a group. I mean, outside of like company I worked for that I think did it pretty well for a big company. We worked with a group, you and I like shared a client, you had them, and then I got them when I came on board, and we worked with them for a while, and we still talk to this client. At least I talk to him all the time, once in a while, and they're an all remote company. So they're an IT, they provide IT support. And their culture always surprised me how positive their workplace culture really was, considering they had people all over the country and they have about half employees and half contractors. And those contractors were so engaged, you know, in the work that they were doing and being a part of that company and staying on in those roles. And a lot of it, they just had this, and I think that's the best advice we can talk about culture is like pick something, some guiding beacon that really helps you build a culture around it. So theirs was, they loved that book, what is it called? I don't know. He made me read it, but now I forget. It's written by some guy named Jack something in like the 90s. It was the book. It was the gamification.
Like, hold on, it
was about like
gamification. Yes, he's obsessed with that.
Yeah, the gamification, making the business a game, right? Yeah. And so all their like bonus programs and incentive pay, you know, they just structured it well. I mean, all they were KPIs, but they made it essential. They made it a game.
That's cool.
And every month they would have all hands, and, you know, contractors who wanted to come would come, and employees would be on, you know, and they would meet once annually all as a group together. But they just did such a good job with like virtual all hands and highlighting what the company was doing. And I think that leadership group just shared the right amount of like business related stuff with employee recognition, with incentive and game. And the way they comboed it just, I think they were great.
It was good magic.
And they still are going strong. They sold their company. But.
One of the things I know you're talking about, and that CEO, he sort of was the beacon himself.
Yeah.
And so if you have like a magnet in that leader, like capitalize on it. You know what I mean? HR people's out there, other leaders, like if you've got that guy that is a talent magnet, like, you leverage that to the nth degree. Mm-hmm. I mean, success begets success, talent attracts talent. And so use the people that you think are cultural beacons, could be on the front line, could be managers, could be the CEO, but like use that people to go find more people that profile wise or behavior wise look like that person. Yeah. Right. So like, that's how you're going to strengthen the culture, is go find people who, you know, in the mirror, you know, hold the same values and will uphold the same, you know, traits every day, and not put up with the stuff, not put up with the sending Slack messages to the person next to you in the office, not put up with the meetings after the meetings, not put up with, you know, whatever it is that gets under your skin. I mean, you just got to have people that will uphold the values in the culture and speak up and be the leaders, even if they're leading without authority when you're not around.
It's interesting sometimes when you talk about that, how the culture beacons aren't always the CEOs.
No.
And I had one group that I worked with for a long time, and the culture beacon was not the head, it was not the leader, but it was kind of an adjunct leader. And every single person on staff rallied around this person. I mean, they were it. And when this person got kind of, I would say, a little maltreatment from the higher ups, everyone rallied around. And that was the time that I think the culture broke in half.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't, that was their hero, right?
Yeah.
That was their hero. And that's who they were going to defend. And they had the leadership team had a really hard time ever coming back from that. People left. It was ugly.
Well, and that's why
it was so silly. It was such a dumb thing because they didn't identify who it was. And I think their egos got in the way because it wasn't them. They weren't the beacons. It was somebody that was kind of maybe in the middle.
Yeah.
And so I thought I saw that firsthand and I was really shocked by that.
Well, and that's why you got to have more than one person. You
can't be a
got to
person.
build the culture you want, and all have to kind of exemplify, parts of it and be great at keeping up the culture. That's why I always say, like, HR can't be the only culture keeper in the room. What if you lose your HR leader and they're the only ones planning the events and going and talking to employees and creating an open door? And I'm like, everyone on the leadership team, everyone in management, everyone that's people manager, like, we all have to share in parts of that, right? Creating that open dialogue and being good communicators and the things that truly make our culture strong. I just think, like, back to my old days of managing people. And if I had leaders that were not exemplifying the things that I exemplified and that I wanted in my store or on whatever team I led, I'm like, you can't be in that role. And I had to make those changes quite often. I'm like, your people do not like working for you and they're skipping over you and coming to me. That means they're a problem, right? Because I'm not exactly like who they want to come talk to when they have like a scheduling thing, right? They know I'm going to look at them like, why are you coming to me for this? But I'm always going to open my door and listen to them. And, I was like, listen, either you figure out a way to communicate well with your people, to get to know them. I'm like, can you just be a human first and then we'll worry about the business?
I would love sometimes to
get
do
to know
a quiz, have a quiz. That would be hilarious. Have a quiz and be like, tell me 5 things about this person's life outside of work. And they'd be like, do they have kids? I don't even know.
I knew half of my
Two truths and a
employees.
lie.
I mean, I had hundreds of people when I was a store manager, right? Hundreds of people. And like, I remember every week going up to this one employee in men's sportswear and be like, how was your husband's treatment this week? He was having treatment every month. I was giving her time off. How could I not go up and be like, how is he doing? When she would tell me about like what he was eating and the shakes and like different things. And I would sit there and have a conversation. I never once asked her how much she sold. She was a pace setter. I knew that she was great with customers and sold. It wasn't about that. And like,
but then there's a link.
But I expected my managers to do the same thing. So like if her manager wasn't able to tell me that same stuff, I'd be like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Why do I know these things and you don't know these things about your people?
Yeah.
But my managers were great and they all did that.
Sometimes it doesn't even have to be about, important things like that. We had a kind of a round table with a group that I'm working with, and it was kind of get to know each other, which was surprising because they should have already gotten to know each other. And they were talking about football teams, right? And so everyone had a kind of story about their favorite football team, but it ended up nobody around the table knew that one of these key players had he had a Super Bowl ring from the Green Bay Packers and he had gotten it because he was good friends with blah, blah, blah. I mean, the story was riveting.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is that the first time you've ever shared that? He's like, that's the first time anyone ever asked me.
Oh, wow.
But then I was like, look at me.
You're like, where's that ring? Can I wear it for a second?
Yeah. Well,
But it was funny.
We had one client that we worked with and the leadership team was having a little bit of communication problem and different things over the years. And so they started reading that Patrick Lencioni book, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and they did the quiz and the scores were a little like
I was just
surprising to some, not surprising to me or all, but surprising to some what the scores were and what the areas of issue were. And I remember it was kind of the first time I came into the group and really led the leadership meeting and kind of the conversation around it. And I remember looking around this room, and this was a group that the probably newest person outside of me in that room had been with them like 3 years. So like, I mean, they all knew each other, seemingly so. And I was just like, when's the last time you guys just sat in a room and like talked about your lives,
Chit
you know?
chat,
And like, I know you all know each other's like wives and kids' names for the most part, but like, do you know what great. Do you know where that kid's going to college next year? Like, you haven't even asked those questions. Like, how is it I know some of these things and you don't? And then I thought to myself, I'm like, listen, I'm just a consultant and I've only been with you 6 months, but like, nobody in this room has ever once asked me anything about my life, ever. They didn't know where I went to college. They didn't know where I was from. I think they knew I worked for Nordstrom. That's about all they knew that they got from the interview point,
So
right?
funny.
And like, they looked at me and they were like, oh my God. Yeah. One of them came up and was like, I'm so sorry. You're right.
Yeah.
We talk every week and I don't even know where you're originally from or like where you grew up.
So
I'm like,
funny.
yeah, it's sad, isn't it?
But then there's the swing side. I remember I had a job at the Carolina Raptor Center.
Hey.
The Carolina Raptor Center. What is that?
Did
It
we
was
know
a
she worked there?
bird
What's the
I want to
raptor?
apologize for never
Yeah,
knowing
you
this.
never knew that.
The raptor, like the dinosaur, the raptor?
Like, no, like they fly and get on your
birds
glove.
of prey, not
Oh, birds of
dinosaurs.
prey.
But it was one of the
Was it
strangest
at a
jobs.
castle?
No, but it was one of the strangest jobs because when I got there, I'm sorry, I always
Did
have
you do
these
that
weird
after
jobs.
the zoo?
Yeah, it was the after the
It was
zoo
like she got
job.
promoted
I was
from the zoo to
I've
the
gotta keep
Raptor
with
Center.
animals. And
Did you have your own glove or you had to share your glove? with
can I
someone
tell
else?
you that when I got there
I'm
during
worried.
the
Damn, I hate bowling.
introductions, I met somebody who hooted at me.
Huh?
They didn't speak. They just hooted like an owl. I was like, hey, nice to meet you. I'm Beth. I'm new. Hoo-hoo. Hoo-hoo. And I was like, haha, like, is this just a joke? Like, am I being hazed? And they're like, oh, Betty doesn't talk. So anyway, that was that. But this group was a little strange. And I remember like this.
They sound super normal.
Just like the go back and listen to a couple episodes ago to the blood and the bat guy. That's like some strange
animal
ones.
things. I'm like, I better go work for somebody else. But then they wanted the executive director wanted us to go to family counseling and was going to bring her like marriage counselor to the office and we were going to sit around because we were a family. I'm like, not a family.
I hate the family
No.
thing.
So anyway, it was like there can be culture and then there's like normal good culture and wacky. We're a family going to family counseling together.
Wow.
culture.
Did you
Yeah.
do it? Did you participate?
Hell no. I was like,
Did you participate?
no, I did
Did you
not.
say hoo-hoo?
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I don't speak. No, I just couldn't. I had to.
Oh,
I had
I'm like
to leave
nervous
that
thinking
job
about doing counseling with,
with
like,
a bunch of bird people.
bird
I was like, I
people.
don't have much in common. I'm sorry, but anyway,
How
that was
long were
it.
you at this place?
A year to the day.
Oh
A year to the day.
at the Raptor Center.
At the Raptor Center. One time they said I talked too much and I had to stay late after work.
Because was
I
it
was
punishment?
it was
Because you talked
punishment.
too much?
To
I
like be in
talked too much.
isolation?
Yeah.
Ooh, this is so interesting.
Were you the HR person? What
No,
were you doing?
I was the fundraiser, so I raised all the money.
Okay.
I'm like,
For
isn't that
this-
my job to talk to people? So I had to stay late, and it just tickled me so much.
You just
It
had to
was
stay there with the birds.
by myself with the birds,
Oh, that's creepy.
and I did. I stayed. I was like, she's probably
with the lights off or what?
I
were they
kinda kept
on?
one or two lights on. But I did. I was like, what is happening? I was young. I was like, this
Clearly.
is one of the weirdest
Again, these
jobs.
are the things that would have not happened to me. And I would have been like, what?
You're
But
gonna
I was
sit
like, I
here
have to
as a
stay
pet.
late.
I would have
and I
never
did.
worked
I
with
was like,
birds.
Okay,
but
maybe I
God.
did talk too much today.
Oh, this is
So,
exciting.
Yeah, it was funny.
Beth was like, let me self-reflect. I guess it's me. Not
I know. I was like, as long as like I would stay late so I wouldn't have to go to the family counseling.
We do need to like do a compilation of all Beth's
best
I've had
job.
some jobs. I've had some weird jobs.
I know, I'm so boring. I just had like one long one.
The best.
That was fairly normal, I think.
You
The
had
best-
like a really great job.
I mean,
was
even
like,
though
looking
there
at
was
the-
crazy moments, but I think it doesn't compare to the Raptor.
at
you had
least
a weird
people
job though.
spoke
When
to
you were
you.
young, did you have any weird jobs when you were young?
No, I
before?
started at Nordstrom when I was 21.
Yeah, but like as a teenager.
Oh my gosh. Well, no, I was a lifeguard. I mean, that was the best job in the world.
My God.
Talk about wage and hour claim. I'd like to go back and submit my wage and hour claim for the amount of overtime they owe me from
You stayed late?
the country club that I worked at. When I think back, I was there at like 8 a.m. because I was swim coach for the little kids, like 8 and unders. So 8 a.m. I was there from 8 a.m. till usually 8 p.m. every day. like 6
No
or
overtime.
7
Oh my
days. There were
gosh.
summers I'm like, I don't think I had a day off, but it was also social. I mean,
fun.
I had such a crush on this one like fellow lifeguard. He was in college and I was in high school. But so some of it was like social that we didn't want to leave. We were all also friends and we would like all hang out. So we
How
would just like hang
fun.
out there off the clock in the lifeguard office. But they owe me overtime. It's okay. I'm not going to come after them because they only made $5 an hour, so it wouldn't really be worth it.
At least
But-
they didn't make you
minimum
stay
wage
late
is not
for
much
chatting.
more these days, so
Yeah.
it's totally not worth
But
it.
no, that was it. That was a great job. I was an intern at a retailer in downtown Indianapolis, and they kind of put me like all over the store because it was like under HR, but I was learning all the things about retail and store management, blah, blah, blah. And I was working in customer service one night and I was kind of like fumbling around and I set off the like, I'm being held at gunpoint alarm. And all of a sudden, like Indianapolis PD come like rushing through, and
You
like
hit
the
the red
loss
button.
prevention team.
Oh my God.
And I was wondering what I hit, and I was like fumbling around trying to find something, and it was like
Amy.
on the side, and I hit the button.
Oh my
And
God.
I didn't realize it. And I was at customer service. We had the cash room in the back, so it was like I'm being held at gunpoint
for
alarm.
the
Yeah.
cash.
And they came rushing, and I just was like this little idiot 20-year-old intern in the loss prevention team. I thought they were gonna just
They kept you?
yeah, I was
Oh.
awesome.
Oh.
I was awesome. And I was such a hard worker. And obviously it was a mistake that as long as I never made it again, then I'd probably have gotten fired. But no, I was awesome after that. I learned how to do the cash room and I never did that again. Obviously I stayed far away from that little button.
Well, that's
But yeah,
it
that was
sounds
really-
fun to press that button, but it's sad you didn't know what you were pressing.
Yeah, the
And it
PD didn't seem
by
really
accident.
that
Were you like
thrilled by it.
What a lovely culture. Back to the theme.
Back to
the culture? The culture.
was a
Mistakes
fun-
are okay. Culture.
Yeah, mistakes are okay. And yeah,
that
it was
sounds lovely.
fun.
Very Midwestern.
Well, I think
Forgiving.
that was one thing I said this week. I was doing a training and I was like, we're talking about culture and teamwork and stuff. And my big thing, I was like, is it fun? Like, it's got to be fun sometimes, and not every day, all the time is going to be fun. Sometimes it's stressful and sometimes we're going through serious stuff. And, I've worked with a nonprofit that's lost some funding and like different things, right? So it's not fun every day, all day, but I think there has to be elements of fun each day.
100%.
And if there aren't, that's where I think culture has gotten off the rails. I think everyone's got to leave and at least say like there was that one bright moment, even if it was in the lunchroom and I just enjoyed the conversation I had with employees and that's what made it fun. Or, hey, I have a new friend now that I would have never met had I worked here. That's what makes it fun. But sometimes we let all the frustrations build and get to us that they overshadow just the little things that like add those bright spots every moment. And I think this week in particular, I reminded some groups of that, of like, okay, you can't let the negative reviews overcome all the positive reviews, right? And sometimes it's hard because the negative voices and just even what's happening just all around us in the world, things are stressful and the negative is really like outpacing the positive lately. And we've got to like take back a little bit of those positive and try
I
to
love
create
that.
more emphasis on that. And I think that's a little bit of like how we get it back on the rails. And I'm slowly trying to do that.
I love that.
Couldn't say it any better. That's a wrap.
I love it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Hey,
Let's
You don't
Three
want to
big
talk
jobs
more?
we've had
You don't want
before.
to talk more about the birds and the rapture?
I actually- I
oh,
wanna
it's not
dig
the
into this.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's not the rapture, which is that going up
rapture
that thing
center.
that didn't happen at all.
The
I don't
reckoning.
think. And if it
The-
did, we don't know those people, or I don't know any.
Oh,
So it's the
Beth has
raptor,
had some
raptor, not
raptor.
rapture.
Beth will
Okay.
raise money for anybody. That's
I
what we
will.
know.
Yeah, hey,
Just,
she's
I'm
passionate about those
about
birds.
things.
Thank you for tuning in. And we hope that you will tell all of your friends, listen to this anywhere. Or if you want to see us, laughing and cackling on video, we're on YouTube and you can view all of our past episodes. We're in season 3 or 4. We're in
Four,
season 4.
I
Season
think.
4? Oh
Yeah.
my God, season 4.
Wow.
Go back
my
and listen
gosh.
to that bat blood one.
There's a library. I mean, you bored? You on a road trip? Go check the library of episodes out.
lots of topics,
So many topics. Employees from hell,
lots
managers
of HR
from hell,
nightmares.
tons of HR nightmares.
Holiday parties.
Yeah. Oh,
That
we're
one was
coming up
so
on
good.
holiday
I love
season.
that.
Let's pull out.
Ooh, we got to
Let's
pull
pull out some
holidays out of
fun
the vault.
stories. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Bye.